Hands up if you're starting to think about booking your next Orlando vacation. Lee, put yours down, we're already booked. If it's that time for you, why not pay Be Our Guest Destinations a visit? They're a Universal Parks and Resorts vacation specialist and an authorised Disney vacation planner. If you want something special, they also book all cruise lines. Staying on Disney property? Be Our Guest Destinations can arrange Universal Studio tickets that include shuttle service. You can't ask for more. So if you fancy letting someone else do all the planning free of charge while you kick back and relax, give them a call on 800 796 6240, email heather@destinationsinflorida.com or tweet @BeOurGuestDest. Give them a whirl. The only thing they won't do is your dirty laundry once you're back home. Disclaimer, Be Our Guest Destinations do not offer luggage packing, house sitting, plant watering, cat feeding, dog walking or granny sitting.
Welcome, UUOP minions. It's time for the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast with your hosts, Lee, Tracy, and Darren. Decepticons have been spotted near Universal Orlando. Autobots, roll out.
Alright, what's up, Internet? Hello, and welcome to episode 48 of the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. I'm joined today by Lee.
Hello.
Tracy is not with us, unfortunately. She got ill about a half hour before the show started.
She wasn't looking very well last time I saw her. She was rather pasty.
Yeah. But in her place, we have someone else with us. Entertainment writer and friend of the show, Jim Hill. Hi, Jim. How you doing?
I'm feeling kind of pasty. I need to go lie down. Actually, I was always pasty. What are you talking about? That's what George Carlin used to talk about. My roots are mostly in the UK, so people from there, we don't suntan, we sunstroke. So,
yeah,
which always makes Florida fun. So,
it says we're over there in August this year, and I don't do well in the sun.
Oh my God! Okay.
Yeah, it got up to 87 today, so I think you might be looking at a warm summer this year.
Oh dear.
Oh my God! Okay, well, just don't wear your tinfoil hat. Okay?
Tracy's not going to like it.
No. August in Florida isn't a destination; it's like a setting for roast.
Okay.
All right. Just so. Cool.
Normally Tracy would do this month in history, but since she's not with us, I guess I'll pick it up here.
Yeah.
I'm sure Jim has a little bit to chime in on these ones as well. We've got January 1st, 2011. One of the roofs on Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls catches fire, causing immediate evacuation of the ride. The ride did not resume normal operations again until March 3rd, 2011.
Do we really want to go down the Dudley road? All right. Long story short, with Dudley, that was never supposed to be an opening day attraction.
Yeah, I think when you came on before, you said, didn't you, that they ended up rushing it through?
Yeah, I mean, it was supposed to be the thing you had to come back in year 2 to do, and as a result of which, there were all sorts of shortcuts backstage. In fact, when that fire broke out, it was one of those things where it's, we must have completed the roof. It caught fire. That's one of those rides I feel badly for. I wish, don't get me wrong, Universal Creative does great work, and I just wonder at some point if they're ever going to circle back on Dudley and finish it the way it was originally designed to be.
Yeah.
But given that this side of the park is, that's where everyone keeps talking about the new land going in, I don't necessarily see that happening.
Well, we were talking about it the other day, Tracy and I, and you look at the footprint for that ride is huge.
Yeah. And in fact, I'm sure you've been hearing the stories about, just this past week, they've announced Jurassic Park 4 is coming out summer of 2014. And there were some indications something was in the work because there was bubbling up 2-3 weeks ago about Universal reviving its expansion plans for Jurassic Park and Islands of Adventure.
Oh yes, let's leave that. We'll get into that later.
Okay.
And despite all that, Dudley Do Right still does manage somehow to have one of the longest queues at pretty much at all times at Islands of Adventure.
Let's be honest, it's a water ride in the heat.
Yeah, that is true.
But but the weird thing of it is that from a balance point of view, to put Dudley the water ride next to Popeye the water ride.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's another one of those interesting kind of little bends in the story that, in fact, the gentleman who just directed Hotel Transylvania, Gennady Taraskowski.
Easy for you to say.
Took me 3 tries. He's actually working on a Popeye origin film for Sony Pictures Animation right now.
Okay.
And it's just kind of interesting to hear if the future plans are going the way they think they're going to go. They may end up skinning Popeye off the front of the land there and keeping it intact, with the notion that if this film turns Popeye back into sort of viable character, and then that frees up all of the rest of Cartoon Lagoon. In fact, the footprint you were talking about for something else.
Yeah.
What that might be. So.
All right, let's move on here. January 17th, 2008, Disaster, a motion picture ride starring you, opened, replacing Earthquake the Big One, which really was just a facelift for Earthquake. But in my opinion, it was nothing but good. I love the interaction with Christopher Walken on stage there.
Yeah, that blew me away.
Totally. Mm-hmm. And think about it. That's where you introduced Musion.
Yeah.
The thing that makes it possible for Dumbledore and Harry, Ron, and Hermione to appear in Forbidden Journey. That was sort of the proof of concept that you could, put that in a theme park and it would work, again, the notion of it's one thing to do an effect like that, but it's another thing to do it, trooping a group of people through every 10 minutes or so. Mm-hmm. That coupled with the fact, I'm sorry, I actually find that redo so much more entertaining than the actual ride was, the first Earthquake. I mean, when you ride the train backwards to the station and they're finally getting to watch the bogus trailer with all the interaction, that sort of thing, the happy sounds that people make, that how much they enjoy that. And then, they get to the station, they load out. Compared to how that used to be, where you were taking the ride backwards, everyone was like, well, that was fun to watch water and fake trucks fall on us, it's Universal always, when they do the redo thing, really does step up its game, whether it's, Back to the Future becoming Simpsons or Hanna-Barbera becoming Jimmy Neutron and now Despicable Me. Right. Always good at stepping up the game.
I think the thing with Disaster is they used the buzzword, didn't they? It was interactivity.
Well,
to a certain extent.
No, but that's the thing. It's sort of this bogus level of. But that's the other thing. Face it. How many? What is it? Mission Space? Yes, it's interactive. Okay, please hit your button. If you don't hit your button, the same damn thing will happen.
Yeah. The interactivity is between your stomach and the sick bag afterwards.
There you go. So.
Yeah, and consistently some of the best actors at Universal, I think, at any time. They really have the routine down there, and it's one I definitely hit every time I go, for sure.
It's very clever. I mean, it is going to be interesting to see what happens there, though, when Diagon Alley opens. I was talking with Mike West about this. He's a VP on the creative side at Universal, and it's weird when you open up a giant new attraction, what that does to the center of gravity of a park. In fact, that was supposedly one of the reasons they decided to put Transformers where they did inside of Universal Studios Florida. The notion was that if we put this giant thrill ride facing into the lagoon, it'll slow down the people who are going to get in that park in the morning and run over Diagon Alley, that we will at least give them something to divert. Because otherwise, I think about it. If you have everybody, in fact, what happened with Islands? that, up until that point, when the summer that Harry Potter opened, it took the classic traffic pattern of the park, where everybody entered and immediately went to the left and did Hulk. It threw it right out the window. And that meant you had to learn right from the beginning again how to staff that park. And, did it make any sense to open as many restaurants or as many shops in Cartoon Lagoon or Marvel, Superhero Island, when everybody was over in Harry Potter land? And this was so jumping back to Transformers. This was a cold-blooded decision on their part. It's like Transformers will be wildly popular and will slow a bunch of people down. So in effect, it's a speed bump. It's to slow people down heading over to Potter, so they're not dealing with 90% of the guests buried in the back corner of the park. And then trying to figure how to filter them back to places like, E.T. or that sort of thing.
Speaking of that Potter expansion, January 2nd, 2012, Jaws and the surrounding Amity-themed area closes, as it was announced on December 2nd, 2011. The closure of the attraction becomes the third notable retirement in the park's history after Confrontation and Back to the Future: The Ride.
Yeah. But at the same time, again, not to... the difference between Disney and Universal, think about it. When I was actually there the day they shut down 20,000 Leagues at the Magic Kingdom. And I had only found out because I have cast member friends who contacted me. And in fact, I invited a friend out who worked for the Orlando Sentinel and said, look, they're closing this attraction. You want a story? Get out here. And so he comes with me. We get pictures of the people in line and get all sorts of quotes, and they put the story up the next day. And Disney actually made the Sentinel print a retraction because it's like, we haven't closed that attraction. And it's like, you've been telling all your cast members that you closed it. It's like, no, I didn't. and it was only like 3 years later all right, yeah, we closed it, but it was just like, no, it's a rehab, or, it's just seasonal. Where Universal, it's like, look, we're going to close this attraction. We're going to give you 3 weeks notice. You want to come and ride it. They did that with Kong. They did that with Jaws. They did that with Back to the Future. Yeah. They recognize that the fan community, that they're people who are very fond of these rides and want to say goodbye. Disney, on the other hand, is frankly frightened of the people who want to say goodbye to rides. But again, Universal... It's a class act. It's one of these things where you want to say goodbye. Just what happened, the week before last, all the people in California who, given the heads up about, you want to go see Terminator, come out, say goodbye to this ride. So.
Good. And I will push everyone go and listen to episode 21. Jim, you were on our Jaws tribute show as well, weren't you?
Yep.
It's been quite popular actually since. Because I sort of tweeted it out quite a bit on the 2nd of January for the anniversary and stuff. We had quite a few hits on it. I'm quite proud of that one.
January 25th, 2012, Universal announced the addition of Universal's Cinematic Spectacular, 100 Years of Movie Memories, and Universal Superstar Parade to the park, with openings on May 8th, 2012.
And you guys have obviously seen both of those by now, right?
No.
Really?
Darren, have you?
I've seen video.
It's been 3.5 years since we've been there, Jim, so I tried to watch a little bit of video but was told that it didn't really do it justice.
I've only been up there for Halloween Horror Nights, so they were running the alternate one for that time. So,
but we had you on the show to talk about it, didn't we, Jim? You and Seth before.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful, wonderful show, and again. Just when you think of that lagoon, hell, they had trouble just staging a stunt show in that lagoon, let alone, doing a nighttime extravaganza. It's again, I hate to keep circling back on the same term, but it's Disney good. It's in fact, you don't think of the Universal Film Library as the sort of thing that has, it has excitement, there's the monsters, it has things like Psycho, that sort of thing, but it's got some genuine heart. And just Mike Aiello did such a nice job of choosing the clips and pulling it together, and at the same time the Superstar Parade, I think what's fascinating for me about that one is the notion of they get two bites out of the same apple. They roll. I mean, I'm sure you've probably seen the footage of how they'll roll, say, the Dora float out into the middle of the street and drop it in front of Cafe La Bamba and Mel's Diner. And they'll do a brief show, and then it's a meet and greet area. It's a great photo drop or a backdrop for pictures and people getting autographs and that sort of thing. And they do that with all 4 sets of floats. Do it all day long. Kids are out playing with Gru or meeting the characters from Hop. And then what that manages to do is that then turns the parade at the end of the day, when they're finally rolling her through the park, it's kind of a victory lap. You get to see these characters that you've seen before. Now they're all together, and there's music and excitement and confetti, and you wave to them and they go by, and it's just sort of like such a smart way of using an asset like that. But no, you got to get it to the. You're going in August, right? You're going to finally.
Well, actually, we haven't specifically got into it yet, but it's because me and Tracy were talking about this today. Because obviously the cinematic spectacular was for last year, which was the 100 years of movie memories, and we had a bit of an argument over, well, just because last year was the anniversary, there's still 100 years old this year, so it should still be going on this year. So I assume they're both still carrying on this year because they haven't actually announced anything.
My understanding, now. Darren, you were up for the Halloween thing. Did you get to see the little sort of filmed vignettes that they did out on the lake during that, or?
Yeah, during Halloween Horror Nights.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, because my understanding is seasonally. In fact, I guess they had talked about doing a Christmas version. But this is kind of like, hey, you can change out all the films in Star Tours. The fact that you can do it doesn't necessarily mean you will do it.
Yeah.
That I believe they're going to stick with the 100th, mostly because it's gotten such a nice response. In fact, it's going to be interesting to see if it gets any recognition this year from the Themed Entertainment Association when they're handing out their Theo Awards. I'm really hoping that it gets recognized for being as good a show as it is. But yeah, I think. I haven't heard any, talk yet about them changing it up. But remember, this is Universal. They like to play the building game.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about. So.
Well, actually, that pretty much does it for this month in history for this month. And so we'll move on to the juicy stuff.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right.
Lee, what is this segment?
It's entitled... What can we expect at Universal Orlando in 2013 and beyond? Which we kind of covered quite a bit of it already, but there you go.
Well,
I think we need to start off with Transformers, Jim. Let's be honest, because they haven't actually announced when it's going to be open. But I think don't you?
Well, I mean, they are moving at warp speed, okay, and they want to be doing soft openings in late May. Early June, and to have this thing open by the first official week of summer. But again, the building's enclosed at this point. They've been loading in ride track and individual set pieces and that sort of thing. But this is different. This is not like Hollywood, where you just you took a pre-existing soundstage and you threw this attraction in, and you only had to worry about building out the one face that faced into the park. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was chatting with the gentleman who did this, and the challenge of California was that this soundstage that they put the ride in abutted 2 of the busiest sound stages at Universal, the actual working studio. So it was always a question of how do we do this, from a noise point of view without disrupting our next door neighbors, and then going forward, what sort of level of sound, sound dampening do you put in? In fact, that's what's kind of interesting about these ride vehicles is that most of the sound is actually inside the ride vehicle. It's not coming from speakers in the walls or anything like that, which could then resonate out to these other facilities. And it's a very, very, very clever design. But again, in Florida, you built a brand new building. You have all four walls facing out into a park, which you're still pretending is a movie studio. So you've got to take the exterior of that building and make it work. For the side that faces out toward the harbor, for the side that faces into New York Street, for the other one that's, facing out onto the production central, street there, and the one that abuts Shrek. I mean, it's 4 different wall treatments. Let alone what's going on, getting everything in for that attraction. They're going to try their damnedest, because obviously they want this to be a driver, big time driver of attendance for the summer here. But let's remember that just because you want something, it doesn't necessarily happen that way. I mean, think about what happened with, Rip Ride Rocket. That what was that? Was supposed to be open for Memorial Day, and I think by Labor Day, it was sort of up and limping through. That's one of those rides that never got the break that it should have gotten. And it's though again, to hear Mike West talk, it still is a tremendous driver in regard to when people enter the park for the morning, they've walked up, they've seen the coaster car cycling, as they come up, and that's the place they want to go to first.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I can tell you when. Sorry, Darren. I know when we went. I think when we went in November 2009, it had only been open about 3 months, and literally within half an hour of it opening, the wait time was at an hour, and that was the rest of the park was dead.
But again, think about it. I mean, that what better advertising is there for the attraction to see that thing? I mean, that's all you can see if you come in the main entrance, and had to sort of hang that the right to walk down along City Walk to make it over the bridge to Universal Studios Florida. You see that you see that impossible hill. You see the vehicles cycling with the lights, and it's like, ooh, I want to go ride that. Yeah. So,
right.
What were you going to say, Darren?
I was just going to say, speaking to like how fast they want to get this thing put together, what amazed me was when I was at Halloween Horror Nights, as I was leaving, which would put it around 1 a.m, they had the floodlights on out there. There were about, I'd say, at least 20 construction workers out there working on the building at 1 a.m. during Halloween Horror Nights.
They aren't kidding about this. It has one of my friends in the industry put it that Comcast turned on the money fire hose.
Right.
All right. I mean, they're spending a lot of money to build this thing, and you don't. When you're running crews 24/7, and I mean, hell, that they were building this thing. I think we talked about this, Lee, in the middle of, I forget what press event I was there for, that sort of overlapped with what is it, Rock the Universe or whatever their their Christian music festival was, and literally in the middle of this nighttime concert event, fence opens up, and here comes a dump truck full of construction debris, and they've got 2 employees in front of it and 2 employees in back of it, and clearing the street to slowly get this thing out of there. Well, what amazed me is behind the people who were guiding the truck, here were 3 or 4 other employees who were sweeping the street. So if any dust or construction debris, they were erasing any trace of this thing, so that it wasn't impacting the show at all. But think about it. That's 8-10 employees. I mean, if you factor in the driver of the truck, and let alone how many people are loading it backstage, all of these people tasked just to make sure that it's not screwing up the rest of the park, so the guests can still enjoy themselves and this project can go forward. No, they are not kidding about this, but I think that's the thing I enjoy so much about Universal. Again, in fact, the whole NBC Universal thing now being owned by Comcast. Comcast gets it. When they were owned by Seagrams, when they were owned by Blackstone and those folks, it was, you always would hear these stories about, we're going to sell the parks, right. Because they don't get this business, where Comcast legitimately wants to be in the theme park business. That if anything, it's like, what else can we do? And that's what's kind of making Disney nervous these days. It's like they liked them when they were owned by Seagrams. It was like, It's like, you're sort of like competition, only not.
So backing off the Transformers building then, Jim, there was a
Yep.
rumour going around that they were going to retheme the Monsters Cafe. Have you heard anything about that?
Okay.
You can say no if you want.
Well, no. See, the problem is that it's one of these situations where yes, they are. It's the restaurant, all right, but it's also it's at the back of the building.
Yeah.
All right. Remember, the entrance for this thing is at one place, and they're going to basically dump you out into retail.
As always.
But that that's they want people coming and going basically out of the same space. They want them coming, over by the lagoon. So this back of the building, with the Monsters Cafe thing, it's just, it's the biggest, restaurant next to Transformers, but it's, if you're trying to capitalize on flow through, it's just not going to be there. And more to the point, this is still Universal, face it, the Universal monsters are a huge part of the company's history.
Yeah.
Would they like that more people went into the restaurant? Absolutely. I mean, the Universal monsters remain problematic because well, you did the Halloween Horror Night this past year, right, Darren? So you must have done the black and white maze, where they paid tribute to the monsters.
Yeah, exactly.
Which on paper was a great idea, but when you got to the actual execution, I mean, I don't know when did you do Halloween Horror Night?
I actually did it twice last year. I did it opening night, which was just insanity, and then we did it again. It was like right around the middle on an off night on a Sunday. So, both times. So we got to see it like when it first opened, and when it first opened, they had a big issue with light pollution, I think, in that one. Where the effect just wasn't very strong because you could see very clearly what was happening around you without it. And then towards the second time we went, even though it was an off night, it was way busier than opening night. And that one had the problem of just, the line traffic there. I was just seeing everybody pop out well before you had a chance to get to it. So
you've kind of nailed it. I mean, it was one of these things where on paper it was such a wonderful idea, but it was from an execution point of view, the notion of classic monsters, hidden shadows, makeups and masks only done in black and whites and grays, and but that's the issue. That the problem is you have these wonderful monsters that are in these black and white films that there's a whole generation of kids who won't watch stuff that's on black and white.
Right.
And, so these monsters are rapidly retreating in the rearview mirror. And every so often you hear some interesting stuff bubble up, whether it's, in fact, I think it was, here's a weird tie. It was Brett Eisner, Michael Eisner's son, who's, trying to become the film director, who for a long time was working on the reboot of The Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Right.
And, so it was an Eisner working for Universal. And in the end, they couldn't get a script that they'd liked. I mean, face it, we live in this, Saw Hostile movie age, where, it's something like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like, okay, I get that. It's a guy in a mask and, chasing people with a chainsaw. Where it's Creature from the Black Lagoon, it's like, oh, crap, that means water. That means we got to go film on location. And, and we probably actually have to hire actors as opposed to teenagers you can just scream and then run from Leatherface. So,
definitely replace the suspension with blood and gore on that.
No, absolutely. So you want it to work. You really, really want it to work. And in fact, those listeners who have actually been in the restaurant, there are so many wonderful period posters and props and photographs. And I mean, if you're a fan of the Monsters movies, it's a great place to go to eat and wander around, but it's not working the way they want it. And, they are, but at the same time, the people who work at Universal Creative, there's no bigger monster fan on the planet than Mike Aiello. And it's just like, I really want to be able to do something with him, but it's just trying to figure out how to do that. And make it work for today's audiences.
Yeah, I think that's the big issue, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And it's a shame because it's, I mean, at the same time, you walk into the park and, it's like, wow, that's the werewolf holding a pizza.
Well, that's two things I think about that is that when I see Monster Cafe, I don't know what it is, but it looks closed all the time.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same kind of like open, like inviting kind of atmosphere that the rest of the restaurants have to let you know that, hey, we're here and it's open. I think even a sign or something might help out with that. But then the other problem is that it's closed half the time.
That's a really smart observation on your behalf, Darren. In fact, it's the stories you always hear about. For example, Timekeeper, when they put they brought that Disneyland Paris show over and made it part of the the new Tomorrowland for Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom, and it never did the business that it did in Florida or in Paris. And eventually what they figured out is basically the door was in the wrong place.
It was up the side of the building, wasn't it?
That's it, exactly. People would, oh, I want to go in that way. Where's the door? There isn't a door. Okay, keep moving. And I mean, but I think you've really nailed something in regard to it's the Monsters Cafe. I mean, just with that spinny thing, you think, okay, so I go here and get pizza. It's like, no, it's in that building over there. And you're right. Every time I go by, it's like, are we open? What's going on here? So
yeah, I think that's mainly to keep like the darker atmosphere inside. So they've got the windows all tinted really thick and everything. But yeah, that. Every time, and then the times that I have tried sheepishly every once in a while to open that door and it doesn't open, and then I get the the assumption when I go in that it's probably closed, so let's go somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's again, I keep hoping that they will figure out how to make that work, but again, to bring this full circle, that's why they're constantly talking about we got to do something with this. We have a restaurant on our production corridor. We're about to open this giant ride. It's right across the street from, Rip Ride Rocket. Why are we not capturing this business?
Yeah.
And, now that, you're about to throw, you're throwing all this money at building Transformers, it's a moment where we're going to have all these people surging by this building to go over to Transformers. How do we capture them? What do we do? And to be honest, putting Transformers on the roof, spinning around, holding pizzas and subs, I don't think that'll do it either. It's like there's got to be something to do there.
Well, I'm going to throw something at you then, Jim. Something that someone brought up to me the other day about Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that part of the reason that ride's being put into that park is to ease the pain of when eventually, possibly even sometime very soon, Spider-Man isn't available in Islands of Adventure? I worded that completely wrong. It sounded horrendous. Basically, they're putting Transformers in to take the sting away from when Spider-Man goes from Islands of Adventure, which might be very soon.
In theme park fan circles, this theory is floated time and time again. I will tell you from having talked with the folks at Universal, the decision to bring Transformers to Florida came about during the soft opening of the Hollywood version. I mean, they face it, they had 6 months early opened the version in Singapore, and it did really well. But, they're standing there at the soft opening, with little to no publicity and having this giant line and people getting out of the ride and getting back in this giant line immediately, where they knew they had a smash hit. They didn't just have and think about it. Think about where, the Transformers ride in Hollywood is located. It's literally, you can't go any further on the lower lot. You have to go all the way through the park, come all the way down the Starcade, and march to the very back to get to that ride. And that's what people were doing. They were blowing by everything else in the park and, making this arduous trek to the bottom of, the lower lot to do this ride, and then staying there doing multiple rides. And so it's like, we have a hit. We have a smash hit. And then comes the interesting part, and I've been trying to get this part of the story confirmed, but it would appear that there was language in the contract that Universal, from the moment they opened the first version of the ride, the one in Singapore, that supposedly they had a limited window to make as many versions as they wanted. But I've heard it was 2 years, more likely 3 years, and then that's it.
Right.
And so they had to have begun construction. In fact, that's I've been waiting to hear about the Osaka park, because it's one of these things where it's like you would think that this would be one that would travel overseas. But yeah, they decided during the soft opening that they were going to bring it to Florida. That this wasn't about that's we have to think ahead for when Spider-Man goes away, when we finally cut the deal with Marvel, with Disney, for the Marvel characters to go away. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are back channel things going on between Disney and Universal. In fact, we've talked about them in previous shows.
We have. They've got to be desperate to get those rights off Universal at the moment.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is Disney, and it's like, I think look, Disney recognizes with Marvel, you don't look at the box office that the Avengers did this past summer and not think we are onto something huge. And at the same time, yes, I know what you just said about the Ultimate Spider-Man animated series, and the other ones coming over the horizon. In fact, the really interesting one for me is the crossover thing they're doing this summer with Phineas and Ferb, the Mission Marvel, where it's Dr. Doofenshmirtz teaming up with Dr. Doom.
Oh no, that could be good.
It could be good. It's one of these things where I'm kind of hoping that Dan and Swampy, have figured out how to thread the needle there, because that could be a lot of fun. But it also could be really bad.
Yeah.
So let's hope they know what they're doing. But
all right, guys, we're gonna have to steer this back over to Universal.
There we go.
I know there's far too much Disney talk.
There we go.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the Simpsons expansion. We've already seen a little bit of it with the Midway games coming over there, which I think they've done a really good job with. They definitely catch the eye, Radioactive and whatnot. And during Halloween Horror Nights, I noticed a lot of people going over there, spending a lot of time there, especially with it all lit up in the dark. We've also heard that they're going to clear out. They've already cleared out the International Cafe, the movie and film, festival cafe.
It is good.
They haven't announced anything though, have they?
No, in fact, they are just so funny there. In fact, I reached out last week or thereabouts, and just was looking, I'm prepping a piece about the Despicable Me Minion Mayhem redo, and just wanted some confirmation on some of the stuff that was going on, and just threw out there that's like, oh, by the way, have you guys, I know you've just shut down Transformers, and I know that's where Despicable Me is going in, and, is there, is the same team working on this? And then the note back from publicity, I have no idea what you're talking about. What's right?
There's walls up everywhere.
I know, but it's I have to say that I actually find this kind of charming. I just it's like it's in fact there's a great, it's not a very good movie, but there's a movie musical done in the 60s called Jumbo. But there's a great joke in it where Jimmy Durante has the world's largest elephant and is trying to sneak it out of someplace, and the elephant and the policeman says, "Hey, where are you going with that elephant?" And Jimmy Durante is, "What elephant?" I mean, that's kind of the whole Universal attitude. It's like, that those giant buildings you're building over diagonally. What? Wait a second. That enormous construction crane over the Transformer said, "I have no idea what you're talking about."
There's no cranes here.
The entire publicity staff pretends they have stigmatisms. It's like, I can't see what you're talking about.
I've heard there's things that have had to be put on the back burners because there's not enough cranes in Orlando to cope with everything that's going on at Universal at the moment.
I would believe that is very true. In fact, when you stand on the side of the Cartoon Lagoon side of islands, and just look out to the horizon and see these 3 or 4 giant cranes. Whether it's the people who are working on the train station for the Hogwarts Express on the island side, or the people who are trying to get the work done on the Diagon Alley buildings. And this is before they begin work on the cabanas on the new hotel. I just again, it just makes writing about Orlando so much fun, that they are this active and so open about it, but at the same time it's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Just great fun.
So I mean, like I say, the rumours going around for The Simpsons is that I've heard they're obviously doing something at the waterfront, similar to what they did in front of the Diagon Alley area, in inverted commas there, which is going to be Duff Gardens, something or other I heard, and then a Moore's Tavern and Krusty Burger, and then there was rumours of some sort of spinner as well.
I think that's actually now a Ferris wheel. And in fact, it's been kind of interesting to sort of track who they've been talking to for ride manufacturers, and from their side of the fence, it's also weighing hourly capacity versus how much of a kinetic, how fun is it going to be, say, to be across on the other side of the lagoon on, say, the Diagon Alley side, and see the Ferris wheel going and think, oh, I got to go over there and do that. That it's picking at the what's going to act as the carrot, what's going to move people. And the thing of a spinner is it's low to the ground. You're not getting the the vertical, the sort of the carrot at the end of the stick.
Yeah.
But the food component, I mean, you've nailed it. Between the Duff Gardens and in fact, that's who was I talking with about this? I guess there was some serious discussion or semi-serious discussion about, if you remember the episode that was set at Krusty Land where they had the 7 Duffs, and it's like, do we really want to build the 7 Duffs costumes? And, I'm surly.
That would be funny.
That would be funny, but it's just the whole notion of who's going to get this joke. I mean, that is it really worth it to spend? Because those costumes are expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember just talking with when they brought in The Secret of the Wings. They brought in Tinkerbell's sister. I'm blanking her name.
I can't remember now either. Jade's obsessed. She can't wait to see it.
But here's the thing. What they did was they did a full body scan of the young woman who was going to play Tinkerbell's sister. And I mean, the wig alone, was like, I want to say $3,000. They spent like $30,000 pulling together this outfit just so she would look exactly like the character did on the home premiere.
Periwinkle.
Periwinkle. There we go. But no, this is you look at that, you figure that much money spent on the 7 Duffs. Is it really worth $250,000 for that one joke? And near as I heard, it never really made it out of committee, but it was just that if we're going to do Duff Gardens, we gotta have the 7 Duffs. So.
What I want to know is, are they going to have the Flaming Moor in Moore's Tavern?
Oh boy,
Flaming alcoholic beverages are not permitted to be sold in the state of Florida, so no.
Is that true?
That's
exactly that one.
And just more to the point, the number of Universal, employees without eyebrows that would end up. A little too much of the flame and the flaming moor there. So sorry. But just think about it. I mean, when you get into the set decoration of that, there's going to be some pickled eggs behind the bar there that, just the detail work is going to be stunning. But at the same time, it's like reminding the cast members, like, look, that's prop food. Nobody gets to eat that. All right. I don't care how much they offer you. Don't give them a deviled egg, or a pickled egg. So
It's funny how long The Simpsons has been going, yet they've waited to now to sort of really flush out that area.
well, but again, that's the difference between a Universal owned by a Seagrams and a Universal owned by a Comcast. All right, the notion is that look, we could take an area that has a single ride. And I mean, again, the very thing Darren was talking about, the gaming. You suddenly created this space that where people were just coming and going, going to the ride and then leaving, and maybe they were going to the, the Quickie Mart next door and grabbing stuff and buying an occasional souvenir. And now you're placemaking. You're legitimately making an area where people are going to come play the games and look at the funny signs and try to win, the three-eyed fish and all that. And if you add this restaurant, you add the Ferris wheel, you've changed an area that people maybe spent, whatever time they spent in queue, say 30, 40 minutes, the actual ride experience walks the shop and they're gone. You can get another half hour, maybe 40 minutes out of them just exploring the other elements. And that's that much more time for them to open their wallets. That's that much more time for them to spring for the T-shirt or to go into, to get a Krusty Burger. In fact, it's when you think about it, when you think about all the work they put into trying to come up with a tasty version of butterbeer, how are they going to approach the Krusty Burger, which is infamous for being horrible food?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, how are you going to create good, bad food? All right. We changed the oil on the grease thing today. Come on in. Come on. It's safe today.
Rat-shaped burgers. I think that's where they should go with that
that's
one.
It exactly. It's going to be definitely a balancing act because that they were going to want the authentic Simpsons experience, and it's sort of like building a lard lad donut shop.
Obviously, then nothing's been announced. Do we have any idea when that's supposed to be finished?
Well, again, this is the big event this summer when they open Transformers is supposedly when Simpsons goes live.
Right.
Which again, for me, that's what's a little confusing about if they are in fact going to feature, a ride element, whether it's a spinner or the Ferris wheel, because it's like at some point the footers have to go in. At some time you have to go vertical. With Krusty Burger and Moe's, you can be behind a construction fence, and you can build these props, these booths, these, that sort of thing offsite and bring them in. But if you're going to build a ride, you've got to, we're going to have to see some movement probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks for that to then be up and running. Because, of course, this being Florida and all, you're going to have to do safety tests on these attractions, and cycle these things to make sure they're reliable. So, but that's my understanding. This goes live at the exact same time that Transformers goes live, and in fact, supposedly as part of that press event, will be the official groundbreaking for the Cabana hotels. So,
I've heard that. Didn't they talk about the Potter expansion maybe being announced then as well?
Well, yeah, but again, it's one of those things. Like, I think from Universal's point of view, think about it. They've got Mardi Gras coming up shortly. You don't really need you don't need the publicity during that point. That does fairly well. Transformers would genuinely help with their summer. They don't need it. That's one of those projects where they really don't want that to open in the fall because, of course, that's all about, the Halloween Horror Nights. So that's the window. And whether or not they're going to actually announce Potter same time, it would make sense. It would certainly, they're going to have a lot of press there. But, that's, face it, when it comes to Potter, it's always got to go by Edinburgh, and it's like, JK, can we do this? No. Okay. She's got to sign off on everything. She redefines hands-on, gentlemen.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I wouldn't want it any other way.
No, I agree. Just in fact, that's what I think is going to be fascinating about Diagon Alley is that, face it, they got all of that, for 180. And from what I've heard, the budget for Diagon Alley as versus Wizarding World, I mean, just, never mind the Hogwarts Express running back and forth. It's supposedly close to $3. And, so $300 million, and most of it enclosed, which means you can do air conditioning, you can do some amazing lighting. It's supposedly going to take the Hogsmeade Village experience and, it's plus, 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 plus. You've got Nocturne Alley, you've got...
They put Nocturne Alley in.
Well, I mean, there's going to be a Nocturne Alley area.
Oh, man.
So I just understand that, between, in fact, just what they're supposedly doing with Weasley's Wizard Wheezes or the, what is it, Ollivanders, the supersized Ollivanders, which is going to have 3 shops where you can get the wand experience.
I'm geeking out somewhat mentally. Yeah.
Well, but the interesting thing from an operational point of view, the fascinating thing, at least from my side of the fence, is what happens when this opens. What happens to Hogsmeade Village? What happens to the Wizarding World and Forbidden Journey? What do we see? How does that impact traffic to that side of the park? What does it mean for ride times?
Well, we had this conversation a while back, and it's like Hogwarts is still the iconic thing, and everyone's still going to want to go to Hogwarts.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. But at the same time, face it, there's a lot of people who have been and, will, just when this new element opens, they're going to probably enter USF, early in the day, go do that, and then probably catch the train and run over and do Hogwarts and Hogsmeade Village later in the day. So does that then mean, if you're the smart Harry Potter fan, do you go there early in the day and then hop the train and go over as everyone else is coming back, coming from the new thing to the old thing? I don't know. This
Speaking
is
to that. What do you think? How do you think they're going to handle that? How do you think they're going to handle the park-to-park interaction with that ride?
Okay.
Because
we've talked about it loads and just can't see a way that it's not going to be a nightmare.
Well, all right. All right. They haven't sent this yet. And it's not officially confirmed. Look, you're going to have a park hopper to get on the Hogwarts Express.
Yeah.
All right. They're going to stop you if you don't have the right ticket. You can't move from park to park, which, yeah. And they're going to have a ticket booth shaped like a train's ticket booth right there. So you can do the upgrade. If you're, the poor slob who's walked in who's only got the Islands Adventure or who's only got the USF ticket, you can upgrade there. And, a lot of people is like, isn't that greedy? Isn't that, aren't people going to give you a bad time about that? And the universal attitude is look, when people go into Ollivanders and if their child is selected and gets, selected for the wand ceremony, and, they're very careful at the end to explain when they hand the wand to the parents and the child, it's like, look, the wand selected your child, you're still going to have to purchase it. They have the option of saying no, that, all right, that I'm not willing to pay the $30 and, it was fun for my child to do this. But, no, we're not going to do that. I will tell you that upwards of 3/4, probably closer to 7/8, do in fact spring for it. But there are other people that say no. And that's the same attitude in regard to the Hogwarts Express, that there are going to be a certain number of parents who, or people who like, no, I'm not going to do it. I paid money to get in here. But there are, that there's going to be a significant number of them go like, fine, let me walk over to the booth. Let me pay the 20, 30 per person per day upcharge. And, let's get on the train. So, and look, they're going to have to learn how to handle crowds. They're going to have to learn how to handle capacity. From what I understand, it's a 3 to 4 minute long experience. I mean, again, it's a theme park. um, when you're on the train coming and going. And in fact, there are supposedly 2 different ride films. So people traveling from Diagon Alley over to Hogsmeade get one film, and people going the other way get another film. In fact, supposedly, you've probably heard about the filming that's been going on
At Leavesden, yeah.
Yeah, it's what they've been doing is shooting both the live action inserts for the coaster, as well as for the Hogwarts Express ride film elements. So, and in fact, it's been some very sweet stories about everybody getting back together and being happy to see one another. And I guess J.K. herself came out for a day or two of filming just because she's missed them as well. So, but yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, and yeah, there's going to be a learning curve in regard to how they handle the crowds and move things back and forth. But that's just like every other theme park attraction on the planet.
Well, I'd say it was when the Wizarding World first opened.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I remember being there on opening day, and just seeing that wall of humanity, going into islands, and just I'm sure you've seen the photographs of where they had the queue starting on Marvel Island side and just it wrapped all the way around. They had the people entering from but it eventually it was self-regulating. That those that had to be there for opening day or the opening months or that sort of thing, it eventually calmed down, and it's better now. It's still busy, and when the other one opens, when Diagon Alley opens, you will see the traffic pattern change. But that's kind of the nature of theme parks. That the new attraction then becomes the new center of gravity, and again, then that's not. There's a reason they're spending that money on Simpsons. They want something to look appealing across the way. So all those people standing in line to get into the Diagon Alley, it's like, well, we could go try that while we're waiting.
Yeah.
So,
do you foresee them opening up more ways to get across the parks besides just through the express ride?
I think you have to understand that. I mean, I think I told you this story, Lee, about the initial expansion plans for Potter, how they wanted to sort of erase all of Lost Continent. And they wanted to build Diagon Alley and everything down the hill there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it was Rowling herself who said they couldn't do it because there had to be some physical distance between these two things.
Well, yeah, because Hogsmeade's up in Scotland somewhere and Diagon Alley's in London.
There you go. So it was one of these things where it's like, and remember, you have to keep this woman happy because now mind you that supposedly the language of the original deal has been amended. I think we talked originally about the first bring it into theme park rights, that it was originally a 10-year contract with 2 5-year options to renew. And my understanding is now we're in, I want to say they've changed it to a 30-year deal with 2 10-year renewals.
Whoa.
So, well, no, but you got to understand that they had to do that, taking into the fact that, they've already announced this is going into Osaka, and God help you, what they're going to do in California with this. In fact, that's what's going to be interesting to see where the stateside Potter fans want to go to more once they build the Hollywood version, and we're talking a full-size Hogwarts castle looming up on that hillside in California, and that you can go dine in the Great Hall, and you can go down and take a Defense Against the Dark Arts class. That's going to be a big deal. A lot of people are going to suddenly start planning trips to California, not to go to Disney, but to go to Harry Potter, and the mouse kind of knows that. So
there was rumors that we're going to bring the Great Hall experience to the one in Orlando, wasn't there? I take it there's nothing.
They did. The problem is the land, and also, look, what they're trying to do in California. It's a very, very smart. What they're trying to do is make it so that if you're doing the Great Hall dining experience, you can do it inside the park. You can walk into the castle from that side, but there will also be a dedicated entrance on the City Walk side. So if and my understanding is they're going to try to do 2 seatings. per night. And so if you just want to come in and do just do the dining, you can buy the package and come in from the City Walk side. It can be, literally, it becomes a choice of looking at all the options that are there for City Walk. And this suddenly becomes another one of them. I mean, and look, at the same time, this isn't unprecedented. I mean, you and I, Lee, talked, I think, on an earlier show about one of the original plans for a Rip Ride Rocket was that coaster was supposed to stay open after the opened for the night. That if you actually walk up the Blue Man Group side, you can see the fencing and the path that would allow guests to enter from that side. I mean, it would be an upcharge. I want to say it was going to be $5 or $6 per person to ride it.
Actually, there's a new gate just been put in around that area recently. I wonder.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's that you got to wonder if again, given the stories that are out there about Blue Man Group and the ticket sales, it's kind of sad. They spent all that money to upgrade that show, and they really didn't get the bump they were hoping. So,
well, Darren, you went to the media event, didn't you? Or like a preview, and you enjoyed it, didn't you?
Right. Yeah, but I mean, it was a media preview. They just showed us the new stuff, so we didn't really get to see it integrated into the whole show. And there are, the Blue Man fans have seen their shows,
Right.
Yeah, that is the problem.
Yeah.
And what's kind of weird is that somebody was just pointing out to me, for example, their first time ever selling Blue Man Group through Groupon.
Okay.
Which is, that's never a good sign. And now, mind you, if you talk on the convention sales, group sales, that sort of thing, there are blocks of tickets already sold well in advance for Blue Man Group. But it's a fascinating theater if you actually get into it. They have a way that they can actually pull a black curtain, and that entire sort of, Darren, you've been in the theater, so you know that the sort of set of risers that are to the back, they can pull that entire seating area out of the inventory just by pulling a curtain. So you can do what it seems to be a full show and not realize that there's an entire seating area to the back that they're not using. But they have a nut. They have to make, I want to say they have to sell 300 seats per show to be able to turn a profit. And anything below that, if they run for a while, they're going to have problems. And in the case of Blue Man Group, you've got, they spent a lot of money. They spent $20 million to upgrade that show. I mean, previously, the set that was in there was from the traveling edition of the Blue Man Group. They didn't spend any money. They just took the tour, threw it into the building, and it was hugely successful. But this version, when you spend all this money, you pour it in as, you want a return on that investment, and it evidently isn't happening.
I think that's something that they're going to have to deal with having an outside show, a show that's not included in your admission to a theme park in a theme park area. You're going to always have that hesitation from the people that are going in, because they're getting to see shows. Of course, they're not of the same caliber as these shows for free inside the park with their admission, or at least that's the thinking. You're paying for it with your ticket, but and then having this additional add-on thing that costs almost as much or more possibly than the ticket to the theme park itself, I think it makes a lot of people hesitate.
Well, let me throw one other thing out there, because you got to remember that on the other side of Transformers, on the other side of Diagon Alley, on the other side of Simpsons, there are other projects coming. And one of the ones that's really been bubbling up lately is Mount Crumpet. Have you guys heard about this?
We actually mentioned it. It was on Lance reported or sort of mentioned it on Screamscape a while back. We mentioned it on the show.
Okay.
A couple back.
Because this is supposedly Universal's response to Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. It's a family-friendly coaster. Obviously themed to the Grinch, would have tremendous seasonal appeal, but you're going to need a fairly big footprint to do this. And a couple of ideas have been kind of floated that where Blue Man Group is seated right now could, and if you're going to keep that theater in place where you shuttle people in seasonally to do, the Grinchmas show. So it's like, well, wouldn't it make sense maybe to create a dedicated facility, and then to sort of build the Mount Crumpet ride around that? But there's another thing they've been talking about is kind of a blow off. The very thing we were talking about earlier. If you are, in fact, moving people back and forth as much as you are using the Hogwarts Express, chances are you have to address the fact that people think about it. When you go into Universal Studios, you go into Islands of Adventure and you're carrying your crap and, you're going to, I need to rent a locker. I want to put my windbreaker in, or I want to put in the diaper bag or whatever. It's always at the front of the park.
Yeah.
And then it comes toward, think about it, it's the end of the night and you were getting ready to go back to your hotel and you have, you started your day at Islands and you went over to Universal Studios, Florida, and you're going out to the gate and go, oh no, I left my bag in the other thing. And, wouldn't it be easier if there were in fact a path at the front of the park, that, mind you, you'd have to have the proper admission to do it. I mean, that you wouldn't have to walk back, either go out the front gate, and think about how tough it is to go through between those two parks. If you leave Universal Studios, Florida, you've got to walk by NBA and, it's a schlep. On the other hand, if there were a relatively short, it's really relatively short distance between, the production central corridor, by the sort of the gift shop. I mean, you think about it, the Blue Man Group, where that theater is located.
Well, yeah, because that's when we did Halloween Horror Nights in 2004. They connected the two parks from behind the Cat in the Hat and come out down the side of where Despicable Me is.
Right, and think about how long did it take you to cross that distance? It was what, 2-3 minutes tops?
Yeah, it was going through a scare zone, so it was a bit longer. But yeah, if you just trawled through it, yeah.
So supposedly the idea is that if, in fact, the Mount Crumpet project does go forward, and you then take that soundstage that you've now dedicated for the Grinchmas show, and then you then build a themed path between the two parks. But you obviously you're going to have to staff it. You're going to have a cast member there that's checking, whether or not you've got the admission that allows you to travel between the two parks, or, that sort of thing. But that would, from an operational point of view, that would make life so much easier once you've fired up the Hogwarts Express. That if you ended up with that panic parent that had to get back over and get their bag, or somebody who realized that, I want to get that gift that I saw, but it's only in the Islands gift shop at the front of the park, or the studio complex. So it's one of these things that keeps moving in, on and off the table for that park. And, in a weird sort of way, it would be the Universal equivalent of, the back street that they've always talked about for Main Street at Disneyland. They were going to build the second street out behind Main Street between Main Street and Tomorrowland as sort of a blow-off area that would allow people, when they're doing, parades and that sort of thing, to be able to move through the park. So it'll just be interesting to see if those projects go forward. But I think a lot of that depends on, if Comcast keeps the money fire hose turned on.
Yeah.
Right.
Moving back over onto Diagon Alley a little bit, Jim, Darren and I were discussing a permit that Universal filed not that long ago for glass-free 3D, and we assumed that it was going to be part of the Gringotts coaster. Have you seen that permit?
Yeah, that's Musion.
We couldn't make head nor bloody tail of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember, there's a relatively easy way to sort of explain this. You've been on Pirates, right? You've seen the mist curtain that they either did Blackbeard or Davy Jones on?
Yeah.
Okay. Think about it. If you're doing the Diagon Alley, the Gringotts coaster, if you remember the waterfall that they pass through,
yeah,
that they're going to be doing some effects to that idea. only you're going to do the CO2 fog curtain that you'll project an image onto. It's I don't want to take this off the table from Seth Kabursky. Seth was actually the guy who discovered, for example, the scene that got cut, or the big fright that got cut at the end of Forbidden Journey. That moment in the attraction where Harry shouts, "Leave my friends alone."
No, funnily enough, because I've never ridden it yet.
Yeah, I do.
All right, and you're looking up at faces like Karkov, and I forget who else. There's like 3 or 4 faces that you see that are supposedly Death Eaters. The original version of the attraction, in fact, Seth actually took a high-powered flashlight on the ride to prove that these were in fact there, because these faces, the Karkovs, that sort of thing, are projected on a mist curtain. They're sort of dribbled down, and so they look oddly dimensional, but it's weird. It's a dark corner of the ride, and but Seth had heard that there was an effect there, that this was in place of, that this was put in because they thought it was just too frightening. And what it was, and so he brings a high-power flash with him, shines it up in the ceiling, and sure enough, the moment that Harry says in the ride, "Let my friends alone," is that they had, from the ceiling coming down at you, were like 40 Death Eaters. Okay. And done in the notion of forced perspective. So there were a bunch full size, very close to you, and going further back, there were smaller and smaller ones. But, the notion of, you just look up and they're there, here's this herd of Death Eaters bearing down on you. And evidently it did, in fact, freak out people during the early test rides. So it's like, maybe we don't need to do that. We don't have to. It's kind of hard to continuously keep the flying benches going when you have to wipe out the seats for where the children eat on them. It's like, all right, let's find another effect for that one. So, yeah. But yeah, the same thing. So that the standby, the filler effect is projected onto fog there, and but again, just anticipate when you see Gringotts Coaster, it is going to be a mix of physical props and projected effects and Musion, and it's everything that Universal's got, or Universal Creative has got in its its tool chest, and that coupled with an amazing, right on top of an amazing coaster. That's the thing. They, when Disney was going to do Harry Potter, they were going to do the Defense Against the Dark Arts Dark Ride, and they were going to do the Care of Magical Creatures Petting Zoo. It was going to be two, it was going to be a ride and a walkthrough experience in Fantasyland. And Universal knew that they had to do the capsule. They had to do everything big. Or at least enough forced perspective that you thought it was big. And now, for Hollywood, they're going to take their forced perspective or forced perspected capsule and do it full size. So, you're going to really get the Harry Potter experience.
Okay, and let's talk. I'm gonna tread very lightly into this. I'm guessing here.
Yeah, I would.
A little bit of news we had about a potential Lord of the Rings expansion at Universal.
Okay. All right. Honestly, there have been conversations going on with Universal about Lord of the Rings for 5 or 6 years at this point.
Well, haven't they been talking to Disney as well?
Well, in fact, it's funny you bring that up because, in fact, I was at the new Fantasyland press party, and I had a friend who works for Warner Brothers New Line, who came up to me at the party and said, come here, I have to talk to you. And it's like, okay, why do you need to talk to me? It's like, a week ago, my friend who works with the Lord of the Rings people, Disney took everybody who works on the Lord of the Rings projects. They flew them to California, they wined them and dined them, and they walked them around Cars Land. And it was like, what? It's like, are you telling me Disney's chasing Lord of the Rings? And so I started working that story. I started making phone calls. I started calling friends. And what it turned out to be, and this is kind of an interesting little bend in the story. You are no doubt aware of the Avatar project, the James Cameron thing.
Yeah.
James is kind of a pain in the ass to deal with. I mean, don't get me wrong.
I'll just jump in and say the thoughts of Jim Hill don't necessarily agree with those of the official Universal Orlando podcast. Sorry, Mr. Cameron.
There we go.
He just listens, so I need to say that.
You don't make movies and that make that much money without being a little crazy.
He's passionate. He's a dedicated guy.
Yeah.
But he's also the type of guy when the negotiation doesn't go the way he wants, it's sort of like, well, okay, I'm going to get my sub and go to the bottom of the ocean for a while. It's just sort of like Disney's never negotiated with a guy like this before. And when the negotiation wasn't going well last year, James was very public about, he met with the folks at Universal. He met at the folks at Six Flags. I mean, he was literally, it's like, I am going into the building. I am meeting with these people. Mostly because it was like, wanted to get across to Disney. It's like, look, you are not the only game in town. And if you are not going to do what I want to do, if you're not going to, spend the amount of money, you're not going to dedicate yourself to this, I'll find somebody who will. And it was a very interesting negotiating tactic. And supposedly what Disney was doing by meeting with the Lord of the Rings people was sort of, look, James, two can play at this game. All right. If you're going to be meeting in public with people about alternates for, places to put, James Cameron's world of Avatar, we can be meeting with people about, possible replacements for your thing at Animal Kingdom. And that appears to be what that was about. Meanwhile, on the Universal side of the fence, have they been meeting or have they had these negotiations? Yes, forever. But we were talking earlier, before we started recording tonight, that when it comes to landing the theme park rights for Lord of the Rings, this isn't a simple thing to do. It's not a question of, say, with Harry Potter, where you had to get Warner Brothers on board and you had to get J.K. Rowling. You had to get these two parties to agree, okay, we can do this. Because this is a situation where there are 5 different sets of people who have to agree that they're going to award your theme park rights. They are the J.A.R. Tolkien estate, that these are, J.R. Tolkien's family, particularly his son James. There is HarperCollins, the folks who actually publish the Harry Potter books. You have Saul Zaentz. He's the gentleman who convinced J.R. Tolkien in 1969 to sign the film rights over to him. That's how that Ralph Bashki, animated film got made, and eventually did lead to the Lord of the Rings trilogy live action. On top of that, you have Weta, Peter Jackson, who controls the films and the look of the films, the costumes, all of that. And then, of course, you have Warner Brothers New Line, the folks who actually released the movie. So 5 different people, or 5 different sets of people, all with very different agendas, have to agree for this theme park project to go forward. And what's particularly hampering this is J.R. Tolkien's children are kind of upset that the movies have thrown the books into eclipse. And particularly what they're very frustrated about is that when their dad signed over the rights to make the movie, there was language in the deal, I want to say, and associated rights. And this is now the bone of contention. Like, what does the term associated rights mean? And in fact, if you want some interesting reading, folks, go to Google and write in type in the terms Lord of the Rings slot machines. Because right now, the HarperCollins and the J.A.R. Tolkien Estates folks are suing Weta, Saul Zanitz, and the New Line Warner Brothers people, because they turned around and they're being sued for $80 million. Because they signed away, they gave a company that makes slot machines the right to produce Lord of the Rings slots machines. And it's supposedly the end run of this lawsuit is supposedly the family is looking to nail down what exactly an associated rights means. Because frankly, James has been quite vocal about the fact he doesn't want these characters in a theme park. In fact, he's really not happy with the new movies. How they've thrown, again, that most people know these characters now from Peter Jackson's take on them for the films. Long story short, I don't see this happening anytime soon. And now, mind you, this could change. Remember, if the Disney company, for example, in the 1960s and 1970s, relentlessly pursued the Fujisiji family, who owned the strawberry fields directly across the street from Disneyland. I think these are at the harbor of corner of Harbor and Gatella, and they actually had to wait for the patriarch of the family to die before they could finally come to financial terms that would, then allow them to acquire the land. And again, that's supposedly where the third theme park. Right now, it's a parking lot, but someday further down the line, that'll be park number 3 for the Disneyland Resort. And it's entirely possible that, that if James Tolkien, the son, is the one that's holding up the deal, the one who's so vehement about there won't be a theme park, it may be one of these situations where they have to wait him out. They you just going to try to convince him to, eat a bunch of second breakfasts and die of obesity or something. Again, this could change. Things in the theme park world change all the time. Again, the Disney doesn't have the rights to use the Marvel characters in Florida until they come to terms with Universal, and someday that may happen. But as of right now, it doesn't look all that likely. In fact, it's to give Iger credit. Whenever Bob Iger is interviewed by the financial press and they bring up that the Marvel characters, what they're going to do in the theme park, he's very straightforward about it. Says, look, we can do stuff in California and we have opportunities internationally, but when it comes to the Florida parks, there are certain contractual encumbrances that I don't think we're getting around anytime soon. So so anyway, I know I know there's a lot of people who would love to see that come into a park very soon, but I wouldn't queue up right now. I mean, don't pull a Twilight and put your folding chair out in front of the Universal theme park, waiting for that to open, because you could be there a very long time.
Well, realistically, the Potter expansion isn't going to open for another 2 years or so it's going to be a way down the line if anything does happen.
Well, and remember, there's also other issues here that, for example, that everything you look at what Universal is up to right now is about extending days, about whether it's opening the miniature golf course or adding the parade at 5:00 and the Lagoon show at 7. And in fact, that's what's been kind of interesting lately, is all of this talk about, a possible Lagoon show in the works for Islands, which would then give them an artificial reason to get people to hang on till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. But then that's just the problem is that it's one thing for Disney to do a fireworks show when it's 43 square miles of your property, and you, when a shell comes down there, it's not quite the same thing as, say, the 880 acres that Universal owns, and a shell comes down in the wrong place and burns down John Phillips High School. So it's you gotta you have to approach these things differently.
So we're getting ready to wrap this up, Jim. There was something that you kind of alluded to at the beginning, and I kind of cut you off as well. But something for Jurassic Park?
Yeah. And what gets kind of interesting about that is that, I'm sure you folks have heard about news broke last week or thereabouts that Jurassic Park 4, the long rumored sequel, is now coming out in June of 2014. And speaking of which, to sort of plow the road for that, you'll be seeing the Jurassic Park, the original film in 3D, come out within the next 6 months or so. But prior to that, there'd actually been a certain amount of news bubbling up about expanding Jurassic Park for Islands of Adventure. And, those of you who are familiar with the early history of that park know that there's at least one expansion pad back there. In fact, if you do a certain amount of Googling, you will come up with some concept art. In fact, I know there's at least one track layout out there for the Jurassic Park Jeep ride.
I know a lot of people would love to see that.
Yep, yeah, and just from a capacity point of view, it would make sense. Coupled with the fact that you have the franchise being revived with this new film, it doesn't necessarily hurt that that this is what's being discussed. In fact, that this is where this gets kind of interesting. Is that this may be one of those situations where people are eyeballing what's in the fourth film and what would lend itself to a theme park attraction, and how much flow, back and forth flow there is from the film production team and the theme park side of things. I mean, the Jurassic Park Jeep ride did basically key off of a lot of the show scenes and characters and that sort of thing that were from the very first film. I know in later versions they were looking to find ways to sort of shoe in the Spinosaurus character and that sort of thing. But the other thing, frankly, that kind of hampered them for Jurassic Park is that, I mean, face it, you enter that park and you look across the water and there's the majestic visitor center of of Jurassic Park, but it's very placid. It doesn't necessarily drive you back to that side of the park. And in fact, because it's so lush and green, I mean, a lot of the eye candy that you'd think would bring you back there, whether it's the people riding on the pterodactyl flyers or that sort of thing, are just hidden from sight. So my understanding is whatever they're going to do this time around, they're going to try to get some height. They're going to try to get something back there that really catches your eye and hopefully drives you deep into the park, because
that's really going to be competing. If you think, like you said, you've got the Discovery Centre there across the lagoon, then Hogwarts above that, and then something else as well.
Yeah, but at the same time, you got to remember that and as we were talking about with Rip Ride Rocket, the thing, and you always have to remember that you're dealing with an international audience. And the fact that, yes, the map you hold in your hand describes an attraction, or, the billboards you're walking by, that sort of thing. But if you don't speak the language, without the visual, without oh, that looks cool, I want to go. I mean, I think about it. When you go to Disney Hollywood Studios and you stand at the end of Sunset Boulevard and you look at that scarred building and you hear people screaming and disappear in that hole, it's like, oh, I want to go there. That's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
They want something. Also, in fact, you hit upon one of the other issues they're talking about here. Strictly from a balance point of view, that you have the iconic Hogwarts castle to your right, and it's like, it would really help if we could sort of balance, there's some sort of element that would sort of bookend the visitors park center. And what's weird is if you're out on Sand Lake Road or that sort of thing, and you see how genuinely big the Jurassic Park River Ride building is, I mean, it's huge, but because of the way the park is laid out and it's landscaped, and the fact that, face it, when your raft comes out basically at the bottom of the building there, you don't get the kinetic unless you're actually standing there in front of it. So they're looking for something exciting to put back in that back corner. And again, just to bring this full circle here, I know what we just said about Lord of the Rings and one of the things that's always been sort of hinted at is that if Lord of the Rings were to come into Islands, it would probably come in as a replacement for a good portion of Cartoon Lagoon, much in the same way that Hogwarts, Hogsmeade Village, and Hogwarts Castle basically ate a good portion of Lost Continent and Islands. So one of the things that's been kind of suggested is that were they to do this Jurassic Park expansion, that a certain amount of back of the house stuff that needs to be done if you were going to expand into Cartoon Lagoon, that perhaps some of this work could be done in advance, as part of this Jurassic Park thing. So we're just going to float that one out there, okay? So see if somebody comes forward with a piece of the puzzle on that one.
All right.
So.
All right, well, I think that will just about do it for the show here. Thanks very much, Jim, for coming on here. Of course, all listeners, you can find Jim's blog at jimhillmedia.com.
Yes, I'm still waiting for your Despicable Me blog up, Jim.
I'm working on it. It's such a great story. It's just the problem is that Mike West gave me so much great material about it. It's sort of like, here, take an entire right whale and make a sandwich. So trying to kind of cut it on into bite-sized portions. But yeah, that should be up on the site sometime in the next week or so.
Cool.
But no, again, you want to do a quick pushback here. It's so nice to have you guys doing this podcast and to have an outlet to talk about Universal. Don't get me wrong, Disney's my bread and butter. But what's great about Universal, particularly for the last 3, 4, 5 years, is that they're a real competitor now. And they make such smart choices that it's so nice to have somebody else to talk about, somebody else, and just not to have to go Disney. That in fact, the impact that Universal has had on the Orlando market, on the Hollywood market, it provide fodder for stories for me for the next 10 years. And which is why it's so nice to have you guys doing a podcast that focuses on them, that allows our people who write and talk about theme parks to actually talk about the competition, to go, they're doing some really interesting stuff on this side of the fence. You should be paying attention to it. So this is a great outlet. You and Tracy and Darren are doing some good work here.
Thanks for that, Jim. It means a lot.
Yeah, thanks, definitely. All right, well, yeah, like I said, that'll do it for this show. Our next one will be out on the 1st of February. So from me, it's good night, Internet.
See you later. And Jim, you can say bye as well if you want.
Goodbye.
We'll see you later.
Bye.
That just about does it for the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. Thanks for listening. Don't forget you can follow the entire crew on Twitter. You can follow Lee at UUO Podcast, Tracy at UUOP Tracy, that's TRACEY, and Darren at UUOP Darren. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/unofficial Universal Podcast. You can subscribe to our Mice Chat RSS feed at http://UUOpodcast.libsyn.com on your Android phone, tablet, Mac, or PC. Again, that's http://UUOpodcast.libsyn.com. And don't forget to find us on iTunes and leave us a review. You can also find us on Stitcher Radio. We are everywhere. Finally, don't forget to shoot us those spews, funny schmitz, live reports, and any other emails to us at podcast@uuopodcast.com. So thanks again for listening, and until next time, remember, live the adventure.